If you're not happy, you need to be honest enough to acknowledge that and start challenging the things that are creating unhappiness. And that suffering is communicating to us that what you're doing is not working. What do I do now? Like, what's the next thing? You actually need to wake up out of your waking up.
I choose suffering. And some sufferings are good, like I choose go to gym, I choose run in the morning, I choose waking up.
Samsara refers to a kind of cyclical existence. You're just cycling and looping, basically in patterns. I would tell, unfortunately, we human beings, no matter how much we like to believe that we're rational creatures, we aren't.
Based on your book and based on what I think, people live kind of asleep. They are just reactively robotic movements.
One way to describe freedom is that you have the freedom to become a doctor even though your parents want you to become a doctor.
I want to start with a quote that you might recognize, and I think that can start nicely our conversation. So the quote is, if there's any skill in life that you could give your infinite happiness, wealth, connection, self-esteem, it is your ability to create meaning. And I love your book. I read it twice now, and I didn't even know that we have common connections, so I'm very happy to have you here. A lot of your book is about meaning. We create meanings, and we live by the meanings. Why is the meaning so important?
Well, I mean, though, if you look at most of the spiritual traditions, one of their main things is to start breaking down or seeing through the meanings we're creating that are causing suffering. They call this conceptualization in like the Buddhist tradition. So the meaning is important because emotions come from the meanings that we create, and actions and behaviors come from the emotions that we feel. And so if you can start kind of working at this layer of meaning, you can create a tremendous amount of freedom and tap into your higher resources, be of greater service, and live your highest potential in a sense. So it's a point that gives you a lot of leverage if you can enter it.
Yeah. I'm always thinking about somebody who would be listening, and I understand it, I conceptualize it because I've been through this mental masturbation, I call it, of my own thoughts, understanding what my patterns are. But if we take some, let's say Susie, who lives in the United States, a little bit overweight, and she has a mortgage and 5 kids, it's very hard for her to break the pattern and give meaning to something else. It's very hard for her to say, my life is good, when her life is constant suffering.
Yes.
And I know you're all about practicality. So how would a person like that break the pattern and get into the great new meanings for the life that might not objectively be ideal?
So to Susie with 5 kids and a mortgage, if you're in a position like that, it's not even so much that you need to create a new positive meaning. Often it can be powerful enough just to challenge the meanings you are creating, and not even in terms of whether it's true or not, because, often we don't want to challenge the meanings, because if I challenge someone's negative or unconstructive meaning, usually a part of them will say, no, but it's true, right? That's the objection. But so it's not even so important if it's true or not. You can start challenging, is this helpful? Even if it is true to think a certain way, is it going to be helpful for you to think like that? So I would say start there. Start by challenging from this lens of helpfulness. Because if you try to challenge it as if it's false, usually you're going to meet resistance in your mind, and your mind will say it is true. So question, is it helpful? And if it isn't, perhaps there's a space that opens there where you can, for your own sake, not because you read it in a book or because it's like some spiritual rule, for your own sake, you can start choosing meanings that are more helpful. So that's the path I would enter for someone that's new to this.
And a lot of people are also reactive. Let's say if Susie's husband is abusing her, there's no way she can get in a safe emotional state to say, okay, everything is good. I should have, it's a different meaning. I should actually, it's okay, my life is good, because she's suffering from physical and emotional pain. So breaking those patterns in this scenario, and I go extreme, I don't know why, but my mind always goes extreme, and I try to find the middle ground from extreme. This is how I just work. So apologize for that, but this is how I work. So it's very hard for somebody who's being abused, for example, and many people are, or undervalued, to start saying, okay, this is not helpful because this is the only way they know.
Yeah. You mean their familiar sense of living is to accept unworthiness or not being treated good? Is that what you're
Yes,
getting
yes,
at?
yes.
Yeah, well, I would start there. It's a great point. If that's your normal sense of familiarity, I would start right there and question, is this actually helping my life or not? You got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
You know, if that's the core, then you start questioning that,
I
because
understand.
if you don't question things, they're going to stay the same. Either you're happy with how things are,
Yeah,
in which case you probably wouldn't be watching this podcast or reading a
that's true.
book or whatever, or you're not happy. If you're not happy, you need to be honest enough to acknowledge that and start challenging the things that are creating unhappiness.
Cool. And there's another point, like the opposite spectrum, which I think both of us kind of lie in this a bit of opposite spectrum. You're 23, achieved everything you wanted, like 90% of your goals, and still feeling unhappy. I used to run businesses, travel around the world, seeing the most beautiful places, talk to most beautiful people, feel completely unhappy. So somebody watching this might say, Mateo, how the hell are you allowing yourself to feel so unhappy when you were a model, like a fitness model, and you had the best job, you made money, you had good girlfriends? You don't deserve to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So, what would you tell to these people?
I would tell, unfortunately, we human beings, no matter how much we like to believe that we're rational creatures, we aren't. We are so driven by our emotional nature. So if I have a bunch of traumas, if I have a bunch of shadows I'm walking around with, and I have like a struggle in myself, even if logically I should feel happy because I have everything on the surface, that's not how the heart works. That's not how the emotional nature of us human beings works. So if they say that, I mean, I would feel sorry, because that means they're also doing that to themselves. So
Yeah.
maybe you can cut yourself some slack in wherever you're at, and start understanding that we are not rational creatures, no matter how much we like to think we are. And so it's really important to work with the emotions. And the emotions, a lot of them come from the meanings we make. Not all of them. Some of them are like traumas, they're stuck from the past. And even when working with those traumas, it's way better to have helpful meanings you make around it. For example, one person deals with their trauma by thinking, it's so unfair. Why do I have to deal with this? This didn't happen to anyone. That's going to make it very difficult to actually process the trauma you have, because now you're looping and stuck in it.
Yeah.
But if you can change your mindset, even if you don't believe in it, even if you don't believe that you chose that trauma as a learning for your soul. Some people believe that. They say, oh, I chose it on a soul level. I want to learn. That might not be your thing. You have to choose something that makes sense for you. But even if you don't fully believe that, going with that meaning is going to help you so much actually starting to digest your trauma.
Because a lot of it comes down to awareness.
Yeah.
My podcast, Soul to Soul, is all about raising awareness. I believe why I like your book so much, because we align so well, because you're also about raising awareness. If you don't start to think outside of the box, if you don't start to zoom out and look at your life, it's impossible for you to create any new meanings. And a lot of people, we both agree, based on your book and based on what I think, people live kind of asleep. They are just reactively robotic movements. Oh, I wash my hands. It's the water is cold. I understand. So they don't really think. They more like go in life sleeping, and they could go in life for years sleeping. But sometimes they do wake up. I guess you woke up when you understand that okay, I achieved everything here. Why am I still unhappy? And I think same was for me. I'm like, what else? Like people dream of my life, and I still feel bad. But on the other hand, people who have more, let's call it mundane life, they have more mundane structures and they don't have maybe opportunities we have. They go for life sleeping for the whole life. They're probably even not watching this podcast. But for somebody who is like, let's say their mom or their grandma is in this sleeping mode, how to wake them up? I don't know if they should, but if you really
Yeah.
want for them to wake up, how would you do it?
I think the best way to wake others up is through your example, right? I feel that's the strongest transmission. That's how you touch people the most. Even with kids, right? We say, well, kids don't do what you say, they do what you do,
Yeah.
right? They do what you're embodying. So the best way, if you really want to be a powerful transmitter of awakening, of a different powerful, loving way to live your life, you have to embody it. And we humans, because we are consciousness in essence, we learn through what I call the copy paste. So when we come together, we learn through copy pasting each other patterns.
Yeah.
So if you have a friend or a spiritual teacher or even a daughter who is embodying a different way of being, like maybe your daughter is, because she's young, she's embodying so much innocence and playfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And then it reminds you, oh my God, she's not trying to wake you up, right, to be playful. It just reminds you, oh my God, I can have more of that. So lead by example and don't try to wake people up, because usually they will get very annoyed,
Yes.
right?
I noticed the same thing. My mission was about planting a seeds in people's minds, so then they might see things differently. And there's two that people who are watching, they already have enough seeds in their mind, and people who don't have seeds in their mind are not going to watch. Yeah. So then I just made it about myself. I want to wake up more, because there's levels to it, to waking up, which I want to talk about too. I know your journey. You've been through you met a lot of teachers. You did 100 Days in Darkness and all those extreme things. We're in Ubud right now, Bali. A lot of people are healing. And sometimes I feel that people heal for the sake of healing. Like it's a never-ending journey where you just do it because it becomes like a comfortable space. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great and very important point, especially in Bali, but really in all spiritual and self-help communities. I think at some point you actually need to wake up out of your waking up, if that makes sense. So it's like you take the step from, oh my God, I have these traumas, I have these emotions, I have these beliefs that have been keeping me looping, reacting, as you called it, forever. I should read some books. I should go to do some therapy. I should do some coaching, do some breath work. Let me try shifting this. But then what happens is then the deeper layers of trauma or avoidance actually kind of usurp or take over your healing journey. And then the very healing journey becomes avoiding the things that would take you to your next level. That could be actually stepping powerfully into the world and serving. It could be staying in a relationship even though you really want to run away. It could be leaving a relationship even though your comfort zone is to stay in it. So at this point, we have to find a deeper courage and be willing to listen more subtly to ourselves. It keeps getting more and more subtle. Like any path of mastery, whatever it is, the more you master it, the more subtlety you start noticing, right?
That's very interesting.
A master of anything notice a profound level of subtlety. So even on the self-help and the healing journey, you have to start noticing more and more subtlety and to listen in a more subtle way so that you don't fool yourself.
Yeah, because essentially you are getting asleep in the other bed. Here you are asleep and working in a job, and then you are asleep taking ayahuasca every day, whatever people
100%.
do. And this is very interesting. This is very important, because I think a lot of people feel that, okay, because I'm healing, there's more and more to heal. Sometimes you look at them and you're like, maybe you should try something else. Maybe, because it's so comfortable. Why don't you try making money? Or why don't you try the opposite of what you're trying to do? Yeah. Because I think a lot of this awareness comes from different perspectives. And if you are surrounded by people who are the same as you took their identity already, you took their beliefs, sometimes there's nowhere else to go. Yeah. Like I used to be Amazon seller. I understand this part. And at some point I'm like, no, this is very limited circle. So then I became entrepreneur, traveler. Then I used to heal for 2 years. Then I'm like, I understand this circle, but it's not mine. So I think another important thing is values, right? Because there's a meaning, but it's also values. What is important to you? And you take values from all those circles, but how do you understand what is true?
Yeah, I love that. I just want to add a point to what you said, because it's an important point. So if we take the Buddha's example of samsara, samsara refers to a kind of cyclical existence. You're just cycling and looping, basically in patterns, right? So what I'm hearing you say is, even spirituality, even healing can become another cycling. And for me, liberation or freedom, which I think, every single human being is seeking a state of permanent happiness and peace. That's what we're all seeking. The issue is we're seeking in the wrong places, so it's not permanent. So we keep cycling. You go to even the healing or the ayahuasca retreat or whatever. Not that it's bad, it's good. It can create some shift. But if you become addicted to the high, you're back in this cyclical existence and you just keep looping around. And liberation and freedom for me is to step out of this cyclical existence and find nirvana, or the place that's free from this constant craving for the next and constant pushing away for what you don't want. So in terms of values, one of my main values has always been growth, right? And growth evolves. Our values actually evolve over time. So what starts as a growth, I associate growth maybe with doing some breath work or making money. At some point, if I reach those goals, or maybe even before I reach them, I'll be invited for my value to evolve.
Interesting.
So the quality of growth can become more subtle. So it's like, okay, I made all this money. I'm not happy. It's not that what I did was wrong. It's that that certain value took me that far. And what's being asked of me now is to enter a more subtle level of growth.
How do you understand that you are ready for the subtleties?
Usually, unfortunately, but usually we have this beautiful feedback system called suffering.
Yes.
So you go far enough, and before that, as you get more and more sensitive to yourself, you're going to have some signals. You're going to have some inner intuition tell you, I think I'm done with this. I need to move on. And the better you become at listening to that, the more you avoid the suffering. You just shift gears because you trust yourself, you trust life. But when in the beginning we don't, so then suffering comes in and we start really suffering a lot. And that suffering is communicating to us that what you're doing is not working. So please, my friend, take a look inside and do something about it. This is the gift of suffering.
Interesting. Because we go through phases as humanity. Right now we're all about hustling. And I see nothing wrong with hustling, but there is this point where sometimes you suffer to grow and sometimes you suffer for no reason. You suffer because you chose a path that is not yours.
Yeah.
So understanding, I think Harmozy, for example, the famous business guy, calls it push or pivot. When you decide where to push, where I just don't want to see what I need to see, or I just need to hustle to get what I need to get.
Yeah.
They're just trying to avoid. Or I'm completely different path that I don't want to take, and I'm just taking it because I feel I'm a man, I'm strong. So you suffer both ways.
Yeah.
But one way leads you to a growth, one way leads you to disaster.
Yeah.
So how do you decide when to push or when to pivot in any way, business, spirituality?
I love that example. And one of the things I've noticed in my own life is that it actually takes vulnerability in that moment of pivoting, because it's like I've invested so much into this. This is like my thing. I have hopes in it. I have energy in it. So it's going to feel vulnerable to kind of let go of it. There is this moment of, what do I do now? Like, what's the next thing? And I think it's so important to be okay with that vulnerability, or even the vulnerability of, I made a wrong decision here. It's not going to feel great for a bit. And I think a lot of people, they keep pushing or keep avoiding pivoting because they don't want to feel this no man's land of, did I make a mistake? Was this right? What do I do now? So I would say become more comfortable with that, and you won't have to blind yourself so much, because it's not that we don't know, it's that we blind ourselves. Usually we know when something has run its course, but it's like if I'm invested in it, I don't want to feel the pain of it. Yeah. So I blind myself and instead I rationalize. So if you're okay with that vulnerability of, I made a mistake, or this wasn't the right thing, I need to shift, then you don't have to blind yourself to it.
I think for somebody like myself is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Because I like to push and I like to prove myself that I can do. Yeah. But sometimes you feel that proving yourself, you're just fooling yourself. And then once you know that you can achieve it anyway, I'll just push through.
Yeah.
I'll get it done. And at the end, it's at what cost? And those costs are not very visible because everything is an opportunity cost. So you push, but then you could have done something else and you could be so way further away on a path, but you're not. So it's a balance that is very hard to grasp.
And even to what you just said, which is a great point. So the quality of proving yourself, coming back to how things can grow more and more subtle, even that can evolve into a more subtle proving, which becomes, instead of proving to myself that I don't quit, for example, or I never give up, etc., I always complete, I can go into a more subtle level of proving, which is I can prove to myself that I can walk away from things. I can prove to myself that it's okay to not have to prove.
Yeah.
So it can grow into more subtlety.
Yeah. But then again, the world becoming more polarized, right? So some people would say, well, I'm a man, man keeps their word. I don't know what other people say. Or
Yeah.
I want to get rich.
Yeah.
And to get rich, I need to work hard and work smart, because if I just work smart, there's many people working smart now, there's AI. And if I don't do it right now, I have this urgency, then I'll be going to be left behind.
Yeah.
And then they might listen to you and say, well, Mateo is saying that maybe you just need to pivot. But then people feel, what if I do pivot and I'm already on this course and I believe it's going to bring me cash or whatever people need, then I'll fail.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is big failure of fear of failure.
So what I'm hearing you describe there is a state of being, right? Someone is in a particular state of being where it still makes sense to move through push-pull. That's a state of being. It's not wrong. It's one level of development, and that person needs to explore that level of development until they're satisfied. And it doesn't matter what anyone tells them, because they're convinced, because on the level of development they're at, that is the right thing to do. And at some point, as part of the process of development, they're going to start feeling uneasy about that. They're going to burn out or feel unsatisfied or unhappy. And that's actually an evolutionary opportunity they're being presented with there to grow into their next stage of development. For some people, that's very easy. For others, they resist and fight that developmental shift so much that it takes them decades, or they have to have these huge things happen in their life before they get the message.
This is very important. Yeah, thank you. I want to talk a bit about meaning, because I do completely agree with you that we create meanings for everything we see. We are in control. I did Vipassana last year, and I think what I loved about it, that when you meditate in Buddha's way, you perceive reality as it is. Essentially, you don't really label anything. You're just flowing. So isn't the nirvana, isn't creating a meaning is also putting your mind into prison? So the prison is a meaning, because if you don't assign particular labels to anything, only then you're free. Is it possible? I don't know. But through meditation, like Vipassana meditation, you can sit down, observe reality, feel everything that's happening with you, and it is as true as it can be.
Yeah, so the question is if the labeling process itself is what's imprisoning us.
Yes.
I get what you're coming from, and I don't believe it's possible to completely transcend labeling. I think it's a function of the human brain that happens. It can feel like it's possible when we're in deep states of meditation, etc. It really feels like there's no labeling going on. And in my experience, the unconscious process of labeling is so subtle and so quick. Like they do psychological studies where they show images to people, and before the person has even seen the image, they're having an association to the image before they've registered consciously the image. So this process of labeling and reacting is deeply unconscious. Through practices like meditation, what we can do is we can take the emotional sting out of it. That's what creates the liberation. When you take the emotional sting out of it, so it's not that your mind stops labeling. It's very helpful to label, but you remove the emotional sting out of it. Because the moment I label, usually I have either an attachment to the label, like money. That's a label. It's just a representation. It doesn't actually mean anything. It's a word, and that word in my brain is going to mean something very different than it does in your brain. Totally different associations. But that word then brings an attachment. I want to grasp at it, or I want to push it away. This you can become free from. You can become free from this emotional reactivity to your own labels, which is insanity, that all day long I'm walking around reacting to words.
Yes. And not even you. Like one of my favorite books is Untethered Soul.
Yeah.
And he describes it very well how at one point he would just observe him observing himself. He'll be like, this is crazy. I can see me thinking in this crazy loop. And just having those hundreds of thoughts about things that's happening, like some crazy grandma is running around and they're just screaming at everybody, I hate you, I hate you.
Yes.
And then he was like, wow. So his idea was, okay, if I can silence that mind, which I don't know if that creates meanings or not, but if you can silence that mind, then you can potentially see things more objectively. I don't know if you can see objectively because everything is just a projection.
So that's a great starting point. But the deepest states of meditation has nothing to do with silencing the mind. But often the intermediary stages, we can understand it that way or even misunderstand it that way. The deepest states of meditation are totally free, because if you need to silence your mind, you're basically saying that the mind is more powerful than whatever your nature is, which it is not. So in the deepest states of meditation, you learn to recognize thoughts and emotions in a non-dual way. You start recognizing the thoughts and emotions. They describe it as like the sky recognizing that the wind is just itself, or the ocean recognizing that thoughts and emotions are just the waves. So then there is no longer any sense of threat about your own thoughts and emotions. This we can describe as a state of beginning liberation. Because otherwise, even if you're trying to silence your mind, you still have an unconscious thought that the mind is a problem, and that is just the mind saying that.
Yes. Yeah, you're kind of at war with your own self.
Totally.
And you have to be not at war and not at peace. You just have to be.
That's right.
Which is... I'm trying to grasp it in my head, and I'm like, can I do it right now? No.
Yeah.
Definitely hard to do. So what are the ways you found, I mean, from having the book was quite a long time ago, to now you're still on a journey. So how does your journey shifted? What are some new things that you learned after the book?
It's a constant, like anything else in life, it's a constant scaffolding, right? So when we started, studying marketing, I remember I didn't even know what a backlink was when I started. So I just started learning, what is a backlink? Then you learn what a backlink is. And then you have to learn, what is a website? How do you get that up? What is on-page SEO? So you start scaffolding, and gradually you can understand the bigger picture, right? Yeah. So it can be very helpful, for example, to do some breath work. Then you're like, okay, breath work is cool, but I cannot do breath work while I'm in a business meeting necessarily, right? I can't do an intense pranayama. So what's the underlying mechanism? So then you start studying the mind, the emotions. Okay, that's great, but sometimes it doesn't work. So through this, you start understanding the nervous system more and more and more. And the more you scaffold, this is the whole path of enlightenment in the spiritual traditions. It's one long, big scaffolding. Yeah. And you scaffold to such a point where finally you become so subtle that you can release all the scaffolding and be effortless. Just like you said, can I just be? So my path has been a long, arduous scaffolding so that I can learn to do nothing internally without trying to do nothing.
And how's that going?
It's going by itself, completely effortlessly. But it takes a lot of practice, paradoxically. It takes a lot of concentration, a lot of training to be able to effortlessly be relaxed.
But do you think you achieved where you were striving to go, or there's still more to go?
It's a moment-to-moment non-efforting. I would describe it like that. Because the moment you describe it as I've achieved nirvana or whatever, you're already imagining yourself as a label, and nirvana as a label, and you made a conclusion.
Oh, that's funny. That's true.
You're back in the loop.
Yes. I'm going to speak for myself and for many other people. A lot of people would love to have beautiful breath works every morning, meditation, yoga. We all have this intention that we want to do it. Yes. And you talk about it in your book as well, but I think this part is very important because I believe if people would follow that, I know if I would just meditate 10 minutes a day, my life would be significantly improved. Yeah. I know that, I can understand that, but there is something in me that does not allow me to consistently do that. So I get into it, they jump off it. So for people like myself and for many others, what are the why and how to
It's a
make it work?
battle, it's really a spiritual battle. All of life is a spiritual battle with ourselves. And there are no, I mean, the most powerful enemy is within, right? And I don't mean enemy as if now I have to go and fight myself, but it's good to know your enemy, right? Keep your enemies very close. Well, it just so happens that our deepest enemy is the closest, and it's this attachment to the status quo and keeping things as they are. It's a gift because the biology wants to keep homeostasis so that it can save and conserve energy. It's a gift. It's smart, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to relearn how to brush my teeth every day because there is already a pattern there. But it also becomes the kind of enemy or the challenge in terms of me being my best self and my highest potential, because it wants to keep the status quo. So in a sense, every day as spiritual warriors, it's a battlefield. Every moment as spiritual warriors, it's a battlefield. I have the option to choose my habitual reactions, which could be good if my habitual reactions are helpful, right? It could be really good. Or to choose something more helpful, more in alignment, something my wiser self would choose in that moment if the habitual reaction is not helpful. But that is a spiritual battle, and you have to treat it as a battle. You have to recognize there is a battle going on, and okay, I lost one of the wars, but the battle is not over. It keeps going every moment.
Yeah.
And if you start shaming yourself, which many people do, right? In that,
Yeah, yeah.
oh man, I didn't do it yesterday. Then you're already
Sounds like
losing the next war.
Yeah.
That's the next war that's going on.
Oh no. Okay. Then I'm being a devil's advocate.
That's good.
So you choosing to be not to react the way you would react, somebody would say, well, then you're not free. You're not allowing yourself to express in a way that you want to express. So you're choosing something else.
Yeah.
You are masking how you want to react with something different. Isn't that a prison of its own?
I like that. That's a very subtle and powerful point. It can be. And for many of us, as we're learning to truly choose the higher path, it becomes that. So now I'm actually reacting against my reactions, right? I'm fighting. Oh, that's the bad reaction. So often that is part of the scaffolding. And then you'll learn, man, this is another battle. This hurts. This caused me more division inside. But really, whenever you go to the next stage of development, you not only transcend, but you also include what was before. This is the hallmark of going to a next stage of development. If you don't include what was before, you're kind of BSing yourself. You're just kind of bypassing something. So what we're doing is we're including the old reaction. We don't have anything against it. We're like, this is here. This is how I have been acting. And then we have choice for the first time. So it's not a prison, it's a choice. Is this the action I want to take or not? It may be. It's not that now I have to be spiritual all the time. I cannot get angry. You are free to get angry, but it comes from a choice. Sometimes it's very appropriate to get angry.
Yes. Interesting. It's it's a very complicated matter because some might say, okay, the only freedom is for me to react as I really feel I want to react.
Yeah.
But then maybe we evolve, and then the way we react changes. And I feel right now like my daughter is 4 years old, and she feels that she wants to scream, and this is the way she reacts.
Yeah.
And I tell her it's too loud.
Yeah.
But I'm like, who is right here?
Yeah.
Me saying it's too loud is my projection of how I want her to behave, or her, she's completely right that she wants to scream the way she was. Who decides what is loud, what is not, what is appropriate, what is not, and why does somebody needs to put a child in some kind of a box and say you behave that way?
I totally hear you on that. I think it's a great point because we are meaning making. A lot, if not a major portion of what we're doing is meaning making. And I would add, there is also such a thing as a natural harmony and balance that we're all as human beings deeply attuned to. When we get around someone and we feel we feel it. If we feel they're like they can't sit still, or they're super jittery, or they're talking all the time. We feel it. We register it intuitively as an imbalance.
Yeah.
So there is such a thing as a state of balance and harmony, which is different for each person. It has nuances because we have different genetics. Some people are very fiery. That's their balance. Some people are more chill. But there is such a state of an absence of dis-ease. And I think if we just listen deeply enough, if we're present enough, we will naturally be guided. So yes, I can BS myself. I can rationalize that I'm free. I'm just reacting how I do. But at the end of the day, when I lie in bed, I'm going to feel in my heart, do I have peace in my heart or not?
I completely agree with you. When I react certain way, I have right away the feedback. I'm like, no, this is not how you want to react.
Yes.
And I think this is what subtlety is. So
Yes.
you really be able to catch yourself faster enough. And ideal, as you are saying, you be able to catch yourself before you do the action. The next level is to catch yourself right after you do the action. The next way is remorse, when you like wake up next morning like, shit, I shouldn't have screamed at my kids today. I'm like, why didn't you think about that before? Or why didn't you think and apologize right away?
I like that I just heard you curse, because I was wondering if I can curse. I was just at a conference speaking, and I wasn't allowed to curse because of the local authorities. So that's nice to know. Yes, totally. And this is the process of scaffolding and subtlety. And at some point in my experience, when your evolution as a human being or soul, whatever word you want to use, deepens enough, you are burning through your karma or your patterns or whatever you want to call it at such a rate, because you don't need to live out. Usually when we're on the more gross level, every thought needs to turn into an emotion, then it needs to turn into behavior, then I need to get the feedback from the world, and maybe I need to get the feedback over 10 years, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. I lost all my friends. But the more you go into your subtlety, for example, through meditation or inquiry or journaling, it doesn't have to go that far. So something that normally could have taken 10 years and getting lots of painful feedback literally becomes a thought that rises. You notice it, the emotion you just included, and it passes and it's done.
Yeah. And I think that's the saddest thing in this scenario. Maybe it's not, but I feel sad about it, that once you have awareness and you understand that you're not doing the right thing, and you're still doing that. So I know I shouldn't have screamed now. I understand it before I screamed, and then I still let it out and I screamed, for example. If I were unaware, well, you cannot judge people who are unaware. It's like, you just don't know. This is your way of behaving. And I mean, that's fine, I guess. It's not fine, but you do you. But if you are mature enough to realize that you should not scream when you still screamed, now you have responsibility, like moral responsibility. Now you have to take some action.
Definitely. And I would say even with that, we don't need to be too hard on ourselves, because yes, there is an awareness that I don't need to do this, but you don't yet have an awareness at the root level why you're doing it, which is why we're doing it. If I had the awareness of the root level, I wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. And I believe a lot of it, for me, comes from addictions. Like, I would find some random addictions to, I don't know, drink too much coffee, or don't sleep, watch Netflix. All of those things brings you to what they call lower self. And your lower self is just want pleasure. And your higher self just wants to ascend and be nice and helpful. So I believe that once we dig into our lower self, then we essentially just don't have a control of how we react. Do you agree with that?
What do you mean with dig into the lower self?
So I would like, okay, let me drink coffee because I love coffee.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, I like how I feel about coffee. Let me drink 4 coffees a day.
Yeah.
Oh, because I drink 4 coffees a day, I feel jittery. Let me watch Netflix at night. Oh, let me watch porn. Oh, let me smoke weed, whatever people do. And then essentially you dig a hole where just from enjoying a coffee, where it was a present moment, now you are, I don't know, smoking crack, watching porn, and I mean, down the road,
Yeah.
you don't connect it. But if you really look deep, it's like you made yourself once indulge into something that should have been nice,
Yes.
but you create wrong connection, and now you're, I don't know, prostitute on the street. It's just
Totally.
an extreme example.
Totally. No, and in some spiritual traditions, they have described two trajectories. So as long as your state of consciousness is at a certain level, once you start going down the path, there is a chance that you can end up in a really extreme situation down the path.
Yeah.
The higher your consciousness, the faster you're going to catch that. It might still be like weeks or months or years, but the faster you're going to catch that and the faster you're going to rebound from that. It depends on the level of consciousness that's present, which, you know, we can conceptualize that in many ways. Some people use past lives, if you believe in that thing. When you reach over a certain threshold, it starts becoming the opposite way, where the momentum of your consciousness is moving automatically, just as it moves automatically downstream, now it's moving upstream towards liberation.
Okay.
So even when you fall off the path, your automatic pattern has been to come back to center and start moving back into your alignment. And the goal of spiritual practice, in a sense, is to get you to this point. Some tradition call it stream entry. You have now entered the stream, or in the Sufi tradition, they would describe it as you have entered unity with God. Once you get that certain level of momentum for spiritual practice, things start becoming easier. But the spiritual battle is very, very difficult. You know, I've gone through it and I still go through it moment to moment. So I have total understanding and compassion. It's a very difficult path. So if you know you're in a spiritual battle and you recognize this is difficult, you need to access your wisdom, your insight, whatever resource you have. If it's breath work for you, do that. If it's putting an app that blocks social media or porn, do that. If it's getting yourself in a new environment where your friends that get you into drugs or whatever aren't, do that. You have to treat it as a battle. Mm-hmm. Use your skills and resources so that you can grow enough to get on this other side where the momentum starts working in your favor. It's just like becoming financially free. At some point, your money starts working for you instead of you having to grind.
But it's also, I love how, I mean, you call it meaning, I call it reframing. So, which is actually a great example. You might be, I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm watching Netflix, I'm drinking too much coffee. I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke, so I quit most of the things I need to quit, and the more you quit, the easier it is to quit. But now I know that, okay, I can be aware that I'm in this battle. My lower self is pulling me down, and I allow it to do it, and I'm kind of flowing with that, but I know that it hits the moment where I'm like, stop. And then I kind of rebound. And the more I rebound, the easier it is to rebound.
Yeah.
And the cycle itself is what is the process of a battle. So you're like, you can treat it as, oh, it's so bad that I'm going there, or it's like, okay, I'm growing right now. I'm going back to myself, but my awareness is faster now. I understand faster that it's not a good. Let's get back to normal. So am I understanding you correctly?
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
But this is great reframing.
And we can even say, to continue in the lieu of reframing, we can even say from that perspective, your so-called lower self is the current vehicle you are using to learn about how suffering works and to cultivate this muscle of getting back into your alignment.
Yes. And this is also very interesting in my life and many other people's life. We choose suffering. Suffering doesn't choose us. I choose suffering. I can go and not drink coffee. There's nothing in my environment that forces me to do anything, which is a very lucky position in life, but I choose suffering. And some sufferings are good, like I choose go to gym, I choose run in the morning, I choose waking up, I choose being very centered when I'm in a position, I don't know, people are screaming or kids are running around, I choose that. So this is different suffering from I degrade my health of not sleeping and I suffer. And sometimes, I'm getting here on circle, but sometimes those two sufferings are very hard to distinguish. Mm-hmm. Like, am I drinking this coffee to save myself to do some work, or am I drinking my coffee because I'm in this state where I just want to please myself, go to this low pleasure, and just feel good and mask something else? You know what I mean?
Totally.
So how do you choose? Because you're a sufferer. I mean, you went to, let's say, Nusa Penida on a car, and this is suffering. You chose to go through a long drive to get to some good place. So how do you choose? How do you discern suffering, and how do you choose this is suffering is important, this suffering is not?
Yeah, so first, I mean, we all use words differently. So I wouldn't say I suffered going to Nusa Penida, but definitely there was discomfort involved,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But if my mind grabs that discomfort and builds a lot of labels and meanings around it, attaches emotions, then there would be suffering.
Yeah.
Now, you make a great point. It's really hard to distinguish between these two sometimes because our minds are rationalization machines, right? I can tell myself, well, it's also nice to just sometimes let yourself have some pleasure. Actually, that feels good for me. So I'm choosing to drink this coffee. That could be just a rationalization. It could actually be that it's good for me in terms of pleasure. I'm chilling out. So the solution for me is to go more meta. I would want to notice even the belief or the idea that I have to choose the good type of suffering every time. I would go to that route and question that and challenge that a little bit. And from there, I'm going to have more space and clarity, and I might discover something new.
Okay.
Because as long as I'm still stuck in the perspective that I have to choose the right kind of suffering or I have to choose growth every time, that actually limits some information. It blocks me from seeing the full picture of what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes, very interesting. I wanna keep on that. Okay, so you go to gym.
Yeah.
There are days where you don't want to go to gym.
Yeah.
What do you do that days during those days? What do you say to yourself?
Yeah.
How your mind works in those times?
Because I've looked very deeply into the belief, for example, that I should go to the gym from a place of right or wrong. It's wrong for me not to go to the gym because I've looked very deeply into those kinds of beliefs. In that moment, most of the time, I'm going to have the freedom to really look deeply into what is this about, because there isn't a preconceived agenda. Whenever there is an agenda, there is noise, right? I can't really listen that clearly to what's happening.
What do you mean by agenda?
So, for example, I go into a date with a
Yeah.
woman, and right before I come into the restaurant where I'm meeting her, the waiter comes up to me and says, "Oh, that's the woman you're meeting? Man, you should have seen how she was acting like the last 30 minutes. She's like a really stubborn and angry person." Now I have already a preconceived notion. I go into the date, I can't really notice her as clearly for who she is
Yes.
compared to if I came in clearly. So if I have the belief even I have to go to the gym, that's going to color my sense of what's actually going on. Am I not going to the gym because my body is really asking for a break? I pushed myself too hard? Or is this just pure laziness? In other words, because I have less baggage into the moment, my laser and discernment is more sharp. I find it's an endless process of honing the sword and becoming more and more discerning and sharp. And the more I let go of beliefs of how I need to be, the more sharp, because some people will hear what I say and then make that a belief and say, "Oh, I can just do whatever I want." That's another belief. That's not sharpening you. I'm talking about when you let go of beliefs, for the first time we start being clear enough, awake enough to really start listening. The more you listen to yourself in the moment, the more your ability to listen grows. And then maybe next day you see, "Oh, I was just lazy yesterday. I just realized."
I like
Because
that.
you're listening, you're constantly learning from your own moments.
This is very cool. So you're actually questioning the belief uh, before, like, why do I need to go to gym? Why do I think that I need to go to gym?
Yes.
What is driving me to go to gym?
Yes.
And is that belief serving me or not?
If we're going to be rebellious, we need to go all the way and be rebellious even against the rebelliousness. We got to go all the way.
Yeah, because what I found about myself working with few very interesting coaches, that I have this notion of which is label I put on myself right now,
Yeah.
but I observe the behavior of when somebody puts rules in front of me, I just don't like to follow rules, no matter how good it is.
Yeah.
So it'll be like, this is important to follow. And I'll be like, I just don't do it just because you said it's important to follow.
Yes.
And understanding sometimes it's a decrement to myself. Like, why?
Yeah.
What's the problem with following the rules? There's nothing wrong. But I think the rebel, you're saying, like just being different and not following the rules is something that innate. So now I need to kind of challenge of like, why am I that way?
Yes. Why is it hard for me to follow rules? One of my friends used to have this beautiful saying. He said, one way to describe freedom is that you have the freedom to become a doctor even though your parents want you to become a doctor.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Where often we think freedom is, I'm not going to become a doctor, right?
Yes.
But that's one type of freedom. There are more subtle levels of freedom.
Yeah. So instead of saying, I don't like to follow rules, I can choose if I want to follow rules or I don't want to follow rules, even though I don't like to follow rules. I can choose to be different. And if I would choose that I want to follow rules, I can choose that as well. Well,
Exactly. And you will only get there by realizing that it's only a part of you that doesn't want to follow rules. And there's probably also another part that likes to follow rules or even overly follows rules. And then from there, now I can listen. Now I have a bigger perspective. And now I can listen. Do I want to follow this rule or do I consciously want to break it?
beautiful. Yeah, that requires a level of awareness. And I hope my kids will have that level of awareness. I think in Bali it's easier to have that level of awareness just because we're exposed to so many different things, so many different people, many opinions. As we say, it's a little bit harder to do when people live in a more stricter societies, but amazing. I really appreciate you coming. I know you have to run soon, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. We should do that again, maybe a little bit longer. Thank you. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, pleasure, Anatoly.
How can people find more about you? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, you can find me on arianmateo.com. That's my website, or on Instagram. I am Arian Mateo. Just send me a message if you want to have a conversation.
Beautiful, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.